Yeah, cool.
And we're live. How's it going, Sophia?
No, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Very blessed to be where we are right now. I think everything's working fine, so we'll see. I think a few people should be jumping in soon. But yeah,
Yeah,
we've got a few things to talk about today on our agenda. But first of all, congrats on the 10K.
thank you. Yeah, no, it took me a while, so I'm glad I'm finally there.
Do you want to give people a bit of an introduction on what you do, what you're currently doing?
Yeah, my name's Sophia Carey. I am a photographer and graphic designer from the UK. I also post like educational content about photography, design, creative entrepreneurship. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I do.
Wicked. So yeah, there's a few things we want to talk about today. So the first thing I really want to talk about is hitting your 10K, so your 10K milestone. How would you compare yourself from when you started out to being at 10K now in terms of like photography, your skills, everything? What's changed?
Um, Everything's changed. Like when I started my Instagram, it was initially it wasn't even a photography page really. I just kind of like, because I if people kind of like know my story, I started in design before I kind of moved into photography. So initially I was like posting like little sketches, and then when I finally got a camera, I started shooting like street stuff around where I live, things that are, like little still life stuff like cups of tea and stuff like that, and just posting stuff like that. And it was just so much of like a random feed kind of thing. And then as I kind of got into photography, I started taking it a bit more seriously. So yeah,
So
that's kind of like how it's evolved.
so you started off with a lot of still life photography.
Yeah, it was just me learning how to use a camera really, because I'd never studied it or anything like that. So it was just me going out with my camera and practicing with it.
Amazing. So what do you think made you want to jump onto shooting with people?
I started when I was about 16. I started going to a lot of like hip hop and grime events around where I kind of grew up, shooting behind the scenes and stuff like that. And then I got given some opportunities to shoot portraits from that scene, and it just kind of grew there. I kind of when I moved to Manchester, I got more into fashion because the hip hop and grime scene wasn't as developed here. So kind of just evolved with my surroundings, I guess.
Awesome. So you'd say you're more of a fashion, editorial, and events and wedding photographer currently now?
Yeah, absolutely. I still kind of do a little bit of everything, but my main stuff is fashion and weddings, I guess. Yeah.
So out of all the three different styles of photography, well, I think you've got a bit more than that now. What do you think is your most favorite one that you normally tend to put the most effort in?
um, I think if I had to like choose one to continuously do, it would be I love doing portraits, but I love doing portraits of musicians. That's like my favorite thing. My favorite thing.
Okay, so do you think in terms of music photography, um, what kind of advice can you give to aspiring music photographers, especially like in today's climate? Like, where would you
hmm
give advice into starting out for them, or what kind of camera to start out? Like, how did you start your music photography journey?
I think just meet people. I think no matter what kind of niche you're in, and especially with music photography, getting out, going to events, meeting people is the best way to kind of get your name out there and meet the right people that are going to kind of want to work with you and develop your career that way. I don't think it matters what camera you have. Like obviously like film photography is big on the music scene, so if you have like a little point and shoot, take that. If you've got your phone, if you've got I started with a Canon 650D, so it's crop sensor, like wasn't great in low light, but you just kind of make it work.
Yeah, I
I
started with
don't
a
think the equipment.
550D, and it was
Yeah.
literally like a 10-year-old camera in the cupboard, just stored away, and it was the worst thing I ever used in low light.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think the equipment comes later. I think you've got to kind of find your feet first.
Awesome. So, positioning yourself in the industry as not just a photographer, but as a female photographer, what kind of experiences have you had on your journey? Like, do you want to talk a little bit about your journey as a female photographer?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, like as a female photographer, one of the things that I've probably experienced most is a lack of confidence and feeling as though, because I'm a young woman in this industry, that people aren't kind of taking me seriously. And really, whether or not that's the truth is like beside the point. It's kind of more about the fact that that's in my head. Kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess. Like when I say to someone, yeah, I'm a photographer, I kind of feel like they're like, oh yeah, you're a photographer, sure you are, kind of thing. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me, is like my own self-confidence. I also think that, like from my experience, like although I know a lot of female photographers, the corporate work that I've done, the commercial work that I've done, I think women are still very underrepresented in the industry. There's hardly ever a point where I shoot a wedding and the videographer is a woman, unless they're with a man. I think that's definitely a thing. Like, although there are amazing female photographers doing their thing in the industry at the moment, they're not necessarily getting the jobs.
So what kind of steps did you take to like get yourself the right exposure? Like, you've hit 10K now, and you're quite a successful female photographer, but you're also a successful young female photographer as well. Like, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking again?
I'm 20. I will be 21 next month.
So how long have you been doing photography for?
I started when I was 16. So like just
4 years.
As I finished school. Yeah. Just as I finished school.
I'd say like in the span of 4 years, you've got yourself a good amount of clientele, you've got yourself a good amount of experience, and now you've pretty much turned it into like a full-time profession.
Yeah, no, I've been lucky with kind of like the breaks that I've got. When I the first kind of 2 years of my like career as such, until I was 18, that was kind of, for me, that all happened quite quickly. I was offered like quite a lot of opportunities in that time frame. And then I moved to Manchester when I was 18, and I kind of had to reset, like didn't know anyone here, didn't have a clientele here at all. And I think I was very demotivated at the beginning because I couldn't necessarily go out and shoot because I didn't know anyone who would want to shoot with me, kind of thing. So I had to start from scratch. And now, like 2 years on again, almost 3 years on, I feel like I'm kind of finding my feet in Manchester now as well.
That's great. So just before we move on, I'll retouch on some of the topics. There's a few people joining us into the comment sections, and more people are joining on the live stream. So what is up, Andrew? I think Vincent and Oliver. How's it going, guys? If you got any questions, anyone else watching, just fire them away in the comment section, and yeah, we'll just respond to them as we go along, or just have fun, innit? So you, as a photographer, you're quite regional. You are quite southern based, but also northern based, and I think that's one of the achievements that kind of is very difficult to do, like building a network from the ground up. Like, I find it difficult as it is just trying to build networks in Manchester, but like, how did you manage to successfully build networks both in South and in the North? Like, what was kind of like your networking like strategy?
Like I said about music photography, when I was in the South, that was very much just attending events and getting to know people. Obviously, having grown up there, I already knew people, so it was a bit of like a head start. When I moved to Manchester, I was at uni, so met some people through uni, and also I knew a guy called George Brown, and he is from up here, but I met him down south, and I kind of messaged him and reached out and said, like, look, do you know anyone in Manchester kind of doing the kind of stuff we do in London? And he like connected me with some people, and I was very grateful for that. So yeah, it's kind of just moves on from there. And I also think Instagram is a really good way to network and meet people, like you and Andrew and Megan. Like, shout out you guys. I met all you guys through Instagram and like networking on that.
Yeah, it is really weird because I think without Instagram, none of us would really be able to sustain our profession. Like, not like, you know, in terms of like, you know, full force, but like, I think it gives us a definite exposure boost. And I don't think I would have even met all the photographers that we met in our scene, or even collaborate. I think I met you just over a year ago on Instagram. You were one of the first people to actually collaborate with me, and I think from there I just got a bit more confident into like thinking, okay, yeah, you know, I definitely should make an effort into networking, because I didn't even know what networking was. I was just taking pictures and thinking, oh, this is like a dog eat dog game. But how important do you think the idea of collaboration is? Because obviously as much as we should collaborate, it's a free market and it's quite competitive, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I think collaboration is very important. I think if you think about it in terms of exposure, you're like doubling your reach effectively. You're reaching new audiences by collaborating, and also it's just a really good way to kind of stay creative and push your creative boundaries. I think everyone has a different way in which they are creative, and you can learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, from that first shoot that we did, I think for me, my pacing, like in terms of like how fast I can, direct people, just
Mm.
learning about like, the time management. I think I learned quite a lot of that on our first shoot, and that's on your channel. So if anyone wants to check that out, you can definitely can. And yeah, just like in terms of being in your own little bubble, I don't know about you, but like I think for some people, you can create quite a narrow-minded like viewpoint on just like photography and art, and it really helps you push yourself out of the comfort zone when you try and collaborate with other photographers. You see like new
Mhm.
ideas and new elements. Like, what do you think about that?
No, absolutely. And I think, like, going back to the collaboration we had together, I think our content isn't that dissimilar, but the way we shoot is quite different, I guess. And it's just interesting to see how other people work, especially in terms of directing, because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. I have a lot of people come and shadow me and stuff like that, and that is one of the things they ask about most often is kind of interacting with your models. And I think that's something that just takes time and confidence builds over that time.
Yeah, definitely. So this is kind of moving swiftly onto like our third topic. We're just breaking down your creative process. But before then, we have some questions. So from Vincent, who's your favorite grime artist that you've photographed and why?
Um, I got to say Flowdown. I've worked with Flowdown a few times, photographing him and photographing YGG, who he manages, and he's just like a really like easy to get on with guy, and he comes with the ideas. He's easy. He just but then Sincere. If you guys know Sincere, I work with him a lot. He always has sick concept. There's so many people I can't really put my finger on just one of them.
Well, why don't we have a look at some of your work and kind of like break down some of your creative process? Like we're on the topic of
Hmm.
music, so we're just gonna like load up Sophia's website right now, and your website's really cool as well. What do you actually use?
So I use Format. It's a website that is specifically designed for photographers, but you can use it if you're not a photographer. Yeah, it's pretty cheap. I don't know how much I pay. I can't really remember, but it's not a lot. I pay like on an annual basis, and yeah, no, it's pretty good. There's a lot of like good templates that you can kind of utilize.
That's awesome. So I'm just gonna quickly jump into some of your pictures, and like you've done a pretty easy job for me because I was thinking of asking you to send me some images, but they're all pretty much showing like all the highlights and all the best bits. So I'm gonna jump over to live music, and you've shot like quite a lot of stuff, like 1975, shot so many different things. There's so many different genres. Like you've done grime, done pop, indie.
Yeah.
So just like looking at your work, I can see that you kind of take a lot of emphasis on like capturing color, capturing like the atmosphere and people. Like, what do you think your creative process is? Like, if you had to break it down to a novice or like, just giving somebody advice, like, what's the first step to taking a good picture for you?
In live music or just in general?
Let's stick to music first, and then we'll jump over to some of your like editorial and fashion and that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think with live music, like it's definitely not something that I'm the best at. It's something that I just enjoy doing. For me, I think a lot of all of my work is about capturing like the moment and the emotion about something. So I will particularly look at um, the way that people are kind of behaving or interacting with each other. So one of the artists that I shoot their gig a lot is Frankie Stew and Harvey Gunn, and there's two of them. So obviously watching their interactions, if they're like high-fiving each other or whatever, those are the kind of things I try to kind of capture, or interactions with the audience, stuff like that.
That's really cool because like there are some images where you do have like the actual like artists and the audience in there. So are you trying to like get into people's personal space, and like what are you trying to find out about them? Because everything looks really authentic and really raw, but then like you've got this nice take on your editing. So like how would you break your editing down?
My editing, I think like you kind of like hit the nail on the head when you were talking about like the colors and stuff. I just try and accentuate the colors in the scene, and sometimes that means changing them as well. I think if anyone's shot live music, then you'll know that the light is not always ideal, so you kind of have to play around with that a little bit. So like the soup kitchen ones, the lighting there is really red, but like I moved it towards more of like an orange spectrum just to kind of like bring out the light a little bit better.
What camera and what gear are you using to kind of shoot in these like tough conditions?
So all of them are different ones. So the ones from 1975 and So Solid Crew, Harvey, all of that was my Canon 650D. And
That's actually
I shot
really
all of that
insane.
on a 50mm.
That is
Yeah,
really,
the
really
50mm
insane.
is really good to kind of like get you close up,
Definitely,
even if you're
yeah.
not, kind of thing. And obviously the 650D is a crop sensor, so that is even closer yet again.
Yeah. So it helps you punch in, especially at, like from a far distance.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the first soup kitchen one, and then some of the other ones are my Canon 6D Mark II with a 35mm. Obviously, that 1.4 aperture, bringing that right down, can let a lot of light in, which is useful.
That's really cool. So, do you prefer having tight lenses or wider lenses when you're shooting photography gigs?
Um, I don't really mind. I like primes definitely, but like my go-to is the 35. But I also love the 50, so it's a little bit. Um, yeah, they're kind of like my go-tos. I do have other lenses, but it's rare that I use them, to be honest.
Well, I think like music, you've pretty much got it locked down. So, should we have a look at some of your portraits and fashion work?
Yeah, sounds good.
So, I mean, where can you like tell me about your source of inspiration for portraits? Because obviously, like music, you're kind of feeling the atmosphere there, but I
Mm-hmm.
find that when I'm on shoots, I have to kind of like create an atmosphere for, that good picture to happen. So like, what's your journey into like taking a good portrait?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of my favorite shots are kind of when you have built up a rapport with the client, whoever that is in front of your camera. And I kind of like to take kind of like candid stuff a lot of the time, kind of off guard kind of stuff, but also just kind of leaning into the natural way that the models pose. I think you can probably tell from some of my photos, I really like using like hands. I don't know why, but I kind of find that like vulnerability in hands is quite interesting to photograph.
Yeah, I really like the one
But
that
yeah,
you
it just
did with
depends.
Josiah, because that one really stands
Mm.
out. And like you're really close into like people's like emotional spaces. So like, what are you trying to like? What's your goal when you try and take a portrait picture? Like, what kind of emotion are you trying to like get out of people?
I think it definitely depends on the job, or if it's like a one that's not a job and it's just like my passion project kind of thing, what I'm trying to communicate. I really like with the one with like Josiah, it's like I was so close to him. Like if you think like how close the lens is to him right there, it's kind of like you're really getting into someone's intimate like vulnerabilities. And I think that can be like important to kind of try and capture.
So you do portraits, but you also do fashion. So where do you
Mm-hmm.
get your source of inspiration when you're planning a fashion shoot? Because I think the majority of both of our followers are really interested in kind of like melding portraits and fashion together. Like that's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
very, I don't know, trending right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think like you can take inspiration from everything. I think just like a big part of my work is trying to tie in like the locations and the vibes as such with the clothing and the posing, and trying to kind of create a cohesive image. I think that can be really important,
Yeah,
especially with
definitely.
fashion, because you're trying to show off like specific looks, I guess.
Yeah, like I can see like you kind of got like a similar mentality to me where we both think about like color theory and kind of the framing and the architecture and like how it kind of gels together.
Hmm.
To kind of like bring that fashion editorial look. Like I think this is one of my favorite ones that you've. I don't know if his name is it Ib, the blue one
Yeah,
anyway, with the guy hands on his
yeah.
face. Like that just screams like editorial, and it just looks so cool. But I can see that you're trying to like meld the styling together, and same for the Devin McKenzie one. There's
Hmm.
quite a few actually where it shows that you kind of thought about the planning. So in terms of locations, I always get asked this question like What's your sort of inspiration in terms of finding locations? Are you like a big scouter? Like you always out and about finding locations, or what's a good way of trying to find locations for people?
Yeah, so location scouting is one of the most important parts of the job, I think, and it's something that a lot of people overlook. Um, for me, I love locations, and I've said this like time and time again, that have a lot of diversity but close together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Manchester, Castlefield, the amount of diversity in that small area is insane, and you can walk for like 2 minutes and be in a completely different kind of like vibe.
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
really important. So in London, like places like the Barbican or even the like South Bank with National Theatre, and I really like that brutalist architecture. I think sometimes when you just keep the location simple, it can be more effective.
Yeah, like
The one of
sometimes
Ib
less is more,
with the
yeah.
blue, yeah, absolutely. And the one of Ib with the blue, that is literally just someone's like garage door in Camden. Like it's nothing special. It's not like,
Yeah.
I didn't like climb the Shard for it. Like
Yeah, it
it's
is
that kind of
mad, isn't
thing.
it? Like how you can change like quite a beaten up location into like a whole set design. So going
Mm-hmm.
back to like Castlefield, you've got an image of like Asher, and that's in Castlefield, and everything just is like framed really nicely, and you can just tell like it's an iconic part of Castlefield. And then you go over to, is it Modest Mirror, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got like another area of Castlefield, and it just looks super industrial. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it is like the same
Yeah.
place, but just two different angles.
No, absolutely. I think Castlefield is 100% one of my favourite locations to shoot in Manchester. It's so diverse, and the way the light kind of catches underneath the like industrial like structures is just, I don't think you find that anywhere else in Manchester.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, I think we might have jinxed our like internet speed. I think it says
I
on
know.
your bandwidth is running a bit low, but we'll keep going. We got some questions from people, quite a few actually. So I'm just gonna like read them out before we jump into like some of your own work. So
Okay.
um, got a question from Oliver, who says, "How do you build a legal photography business in the UK?" So we're talking more about taxes because he's currently in Germany.
Okay. So it is. I'm guessing that's like he's looking to set it up in the UK,
Yeah,
or
yeah, possibly, yeah, or just in general,
yeah.
like, what do you think are the best steps to, starting your like legalizing your own business?
Register as a sole trader. You could register as a limited company and then like be like an employee of that company, I guess, or a director of it. But I'm registered as a sole trader. You just go onto HMRC, and it's a really simple process. And then you just, I use QuickBooks to sort my taxes, so
I
it
use
syncs
QuickBooks
to
as well.
my,
It's really good.
yeah, it's really simple. It syncs to my business account, and then you can just categorize, oh, that's a business expense, that's personal. It works out the tax report. You submit the tax report to HMRC at the end of the
Yeah,
tax year. It's really simple.
yeah, and I'm pretty much on the same boat where I declared self employment like a year back, and using QuickBooks is like the easiest thing. It's like using an app, and it just kind of categorizes everything for
Yeah,
you. So I think being self-employed is like pretty much so easy. Like a teenager could easily do it now. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
So yeah,
It's so
that
simple. Like since they moved everything online as well, it's very easy to do. So
yeah, definitely. So I've got another question from Shahid. He says, "Here's a question. Being not from London, do you feel that you sometimes miss out with the hustle and bustle that is London, and their locations, as well as the culture and connections?"
um, I go back home a lot, so I feel like I don't necessarily miss out on the locations and stuff. I think Manchester actually probably has some better locations than London. One thing I do miss out on is the breadth of events. Like, if you want to do something, if you want to go to a very specific, like if you want to go to an event in London, it doesn't matter if it's like a Tuesday night or a Sunday night, like you will find something. Whereas Manchester, I find it's kind of far and few between events that I actually want to go to. So yeah,
Yeah.
I miss missing out on. No, I miss the events. Yeah, in
Where do you
London.
think you'll eventually settle? Do you want to continue living in Manchester, or do you want to eventually just kind of settle down and just continue in London, or just kind of keep moving about? Where's your hub gonna eventually
Um,
be?
I will stay here most likely. I just think, like you guys will know, that cost of living is much better here, much easier to live up here. So I'll stay here. I can go. My family still live in London, so going home isn't a problem for me. I'm lucky that I can do that. I can go back and forth as often as I kind of want to. So that's probably what I'll do.
That's wicked. So do you think as a creative it's much more affordable to start up here and even kind of like monetize here and just kind of like sustain yourself here?
Absolutely, 100%. I think if you like, especially as a young person, and I think if you ever really want to be on the housing market or anything like that, on the housing ladder, it just makes sense. What I pay here for like my monthly outgoings, rent and bills and everything, I couldn't live as half a nicer lifestyle in London.
That's true. I think just the amount of like things you're gonna have to deal with, like responsibility wise, and just making a living, you just barely be even breaking even most of the time.
No, absolutely. I think you definitely end up like finances, especially as a freelancer. It's a big pressure on what you do, and I think for me, I don't want to make that harder for myself. It's hard enough living here, so I feel like I don't want to,
Yeah,
I'm not going to increase my rent.
So we've got another question from Oliver. He says, here's another one. How do you think will be the photography community in Manchester? How do you think the photography community will be in Manchester in 2 to 3 years? What do you think it is like right now? Before it even is in 2 and 3 years, like what do you think of the photography scene in Manchester right now?
I think it is thriving. There's a lot of people doing a lot of things across creative industries. I think there are a lot of really good support networks. I think it's accessible. I think it's very easy to kind of involve yourself in the creative industry. But I also think, given that it is a smaller area than London, but maybe with the same kind of amount of people, it kind of ends up being a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, definitely. I think even from my experience, I think that I was just so shocked that I was even getting commissions. Like, just try. There's so many opportunities in Manchester. It's just you just got to work smart to find them. And when you do, you've got yourself those long sustainable relationships, which then become retainers, which then becomes into a full-time professional job. So I think like being a creative in Manchester, like you probably couldn't do it 10 years ago. You'd have to go down to London. Like that's where everybody would say like, okay, you've got to go down to London to make it big. But now it's not the case.
Yeah, no, Manchester, I think it's the second biggest creative hub in Europe, so outside London. And if you think about the fashion industry in Manchester, there's really not a better place in the UK to be a fashion photographer. You've got all of these fast fashion brands, all of these small brands popping up everywhere. You've got all these art unis that are like churning out fashion students. As a fashion photographer, there's a lot here.
Yeah, there's a lot here. Well, when the situation isn't what the situation is right now. But I mean, like talking a few months back, we would happily even pass over opportunities sometimes. Like when you have too much on your boat, like that's how thriving it is. There's room for everyone to have a shot and grow. And I don't know. I just think like the field is not as competitive. Like people are willing to kind of bring you along the journey and just kind of like learn from each other, and there's like a good sense of like community here as well, isn't there?
Yeah, no, definitely. Although I would say like, and this isn't a criticism to the Manchester creative scene, but I would say that I do think the London one is more supportive. I think I've experienced more, not like people stabbing you in the back, that's not kind of like the right term, but more like people using you to get where you want to be. Whereas in London, it's a lot more like, we're kind of in this together. If one of us makes it, we will make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's something I struggled with when I moved here, because there is definitely a difference in terms of that. And you'd imagine it'd be the other way around, really.
Yeah. You think people like hold their cards close to their chests a lot more here?
Yeah.
Could be that maybe there's just not as much opportunities in Manchester as there are in London, so people are maybe less willing to kind of open up about all their trade secrets. And
100% agree. I think there's not as much going around. So
yeah, I think we all kind of like dive into that kind of sense of feeling every now and then. Gotta like choose the people you really want to like keep, invest in and so on. So yeah, definitely. How are you guys staying motivated during the lockdown? So this one from one of your fans, Georgina Marsden. That kind of brings us into the next like topic anyway, like the pandemic, and how is it affecting you? Let's start off with that.
Well, obviously, like first and foremost, I can't go out and shoot.
Same.
So that's
Yeah,
strange.
same.
Yeah.
Same.
Changing your routine so drastically is interesting, to say the least.
Gone from being extroverted to being an introverted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gone from like being busy every day to having nothing to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's quite a shock. But yeah, I think like staying motivated, just I'm trying to, obviously like I've got to still make money, so I'm trying to find ways to continue doing that. I've still got like a lot of admin and stuff to do, so just working, I guess. You know, going out as much as you can, you know, like on your daily walk. I think that's really important. I think staying cooped up is not good for your mental health, so
Yeah,
getting out
definitely.
is helping me.
I think I'm the same. Like going back to the motivation question, like I just said to myself, I'm gonna take a whole month just to detox and not do photography, because I kind of was so busy that I just didn't have the chance to even sit down and kind of like watch my favorite TV shows, play my favorite games, or just like even, you know, just read a book and things like that. So after a month now, I can finally say that I'm getting that itch to be creative again, and this podcast is a result of that. But
Yeah.
you know, we're all trying to find our ways of being creative. Like people are doing the FaceTime challenge, that's pretty sick. You know,
Yeah.
everyone's still like taking pictures, but you know, they're doing it in like a safe way. Or, you know, people are finding ways to re-edit photos that are kind of like commissioned by other people. I've seen that. There's
Yeah,
quite a
that's good.
lot. There's quite a lot of like, you know, new ways that photographers are still being creative, and now it's probably like a good time to even if you're a photographer and you have a lot of stock images, you know, you can sell them online. There's a lot of different ways to still monetize and sustain yourself. But yeah, we've got some more questions as well. Before we jump onto the other one, where do you see yourself and your business in 5 years' time? So, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years?
Hopefully still doing photography. I think what I want to do is kind of over the next few years, I guess, really start shooting more content that I want to shoot, making time for passion projects, shooting more editorial work, that kind of stuff. I'm looking at moving a little bit more into product-based kind of business model, where I'm doing more in like the vein of education, like my YouTube, growing that kind of thing. But yeah, I want to keep shooting. And hopefully shooting what I want to be shooting. Yeah.
That's what it is. Like you've got to take those opportunities where you may not enjoy all the time, but eventually they'll lead up to doing like your own passion projects, and eventually you'll be pretty much your own boss at the end of the day. I think that's one of the reasons why I pretty much wanted to leave teaching as well, because I just kind of felt like there's more flexibility in this field, like in photography. And there's just so much more fun, and like the perks you get as well. Like when I was doing like, you know, a lot of different shoots, I was just getting so many like expenses covered, travel covered, you know, like opportunities to be flown out, and you just don't get that kind of stuff with like some of the other jobs you're in, because businesses always want to kind of like make cuts, not give you all the incentives. So
yeah, 100%. I'd say like don't get into photography for those perks, because they're hard to come by. But you know, if you are already into photography, like look forward to them, because yeah, I did 2 destination weddings last year, and like the thought that someone would fly me out like when there's other photographers, it was just insane. Like that's something I definitely want to do more. I know like with this pandemic that might not be, you know, plausible for the foreseeable future, but doing that is something I definitely want to do more of, traveling with my work.
yeah, definitely. So you touched on wedding photography. Should I have a look at some of your wedding work? Because that's something that I've recently kind of dipped my toe in as well. And I think going forward, I've had a few requests for like weddings as well, but because of like the situation at hand, I just can't do it right now. But I can definitely see myself in the next year, you know, jumping into weddings. So what advice would you give other photographers? How would you start your wedding journey, and what did you do to kind of get yourself a wedding? So like I'm on your website now and just kind of looking at all the weddings pictures.
Yeah. So this isn't like the way I got into it, but it's the way a lot of people get into it. Second shooting for people, it's something I kind of wish I had done, because it's a lot of pressure doing a wedding. I'm not going to kind of disguise that fact. So when I first started doing them, I was very nervous, kind of didn't know what to expect, but you kind of like learn on the job, work out. The more weddings I've kind of done, the more I've realized kind of what to do and how to deal with them. I think if you haven't done them before, maybe arranging like couple shoots or something like that before you start doing weddings, so that you are comfortable in not only directing and posing couples, but also people that aren't necessarily models. I think that's a really big thing about wedding photography, is that the people that you're taking the photos of don't necessarily like having their photos being taken. So you have to be very mindful of that.
That's probably going to be the biggest thing I'd have to readjust to, because I'm always so used to telling people what to do, but like, you know, like obviously you're trying to take authentic pictures that people shouldn't even be aware of that you're there. Like, how long does a normal wedding shoot for you take?
So on average, it's about 8 to 10 hours. So I've done shorter ones where they're like 6. I've done longer ones that are like 13, but generally 8 or 10 hours.
That's quite a long time, like, to be at a wedding. Like, definitely,
yeah, no,
obviously
it is long.
What kind of perks do you get of like being a wedding? Like, do you get like, you know, all the refreshments? Do like people always check up on you, or are you kind of doing your own thing and you're expected to do your own thing?
Yeah, so in my contract, if I shoot a wedding that's over, I think it's 6 or 8 hours or something like that, then I get like a meal and a break. So either I eat the food that they're eating, or I have an hour to go off and get my own food, kind of thing. So yeah, I think the thing is though that your hours break is never really an hour. There's weddings are so busy that you literally could start at, I don't know, like 10 a.m. and then sit down for like 10 minutes to eat at 7 p.m. and then be back on your feet. I think you have to be very prepared to kind of be stood up for a very long time. Like my body hurts after a wedding, especially if you don't necessarily have anywhere to put your stuff.
I think you've got to have a lot of endurance to do weddings, because it is very long. Like that's almost like a whole day's worth of work, you know.
100%. And you can't, it's not the kind of work where you can't like go and have a sit down. Do you know what I mean? Like if you can't just be like, oh, well, I'm tired, I'm going to go and sit down for a bit. You're literally on your feet for,
because like you might miss the moment.
8+ hours. Yeah, absolutely. And I've done that before, like gone for a quick like toilet break and then heard like, now announcing Mr. and Mrs. and I'm like, oh shit, like I got to run back. And
my biggest fear that I think put me off weddings originally was not getting the moment shots. Like, I think I still get afraid now. Like, you know, I've not done wedding photo shoots, but I did sign up to do a wedding videography shoot, because I know like I'll always get the shot if the camera's rolling and the battery's not dying.
Yeah.
But what's your thought process on trying to get, you know, that moment shot?
I get it's difficult, but like the same as kind of music photography, you just need to kind of be aware of what's going on and like pay attention to the moments, I guess. And I kind of try and put myself in the couple's shoes and think like, what kind of moments would be important for me to look back on.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, what was the question?
Yeah, just
it
like,
was about,
you know,
getting the moment shot. Yeah,
getting the moment shots.
I like to I think it's really important to have a schedule of the day. Make sure you know where you've got to be at what time, so you're always there. If you've got like some downtime in the day or in the morning, or you get there early, if you can scout out the area, or if you've visited it before, is even better, and kind of work out where you're going to be standing. So for example, you might be stood at the back of the hall, for example, to get the bride coming down, but then you might need to quickly navigate to the other end to get the rest of the ceremony shots. So just kind of working all of that out and preparing in good time is very useful, I think.
So if you had to pick out of wedding and fashion, which one would you do forever? And if you could only do one?
Fashion. I would do fashion.
Definitely, yeah. Which one do you think is more sustainable as a full-time job? Because I think a lot of our audiences that follow me and you kind of like ask, you know, is it important to have multiple niches or streams of revenue, or do you think you can just kind of be like a put all your eggs in one basket and either do just fashion or just weddings, or do I now need to set up a separate website, or can I just do it all in one? Because you've kind of
Yeah.
done it all in one. Like, you've got your own brand image as a photographer, but you do lots of different things.
Yeah, I think for me, having multiple streams of income is important, but I don't think it's like necessary. If you're a good business person and you know how to run your business and you know how to get the clientele in, or you're successful already, then I don't think you need to necessarily have separate niches. But for me, like I just think it's important. Like weddings obviously pay very well, and it kind of takes the pressure off and allows you to do the jobs that maybe don't pay as well, or
Yeah,
jobs that, or
definitely.
taking the time to do jobs you actually want to do. And also, like, don't get me wrong, doing wedding photography is like an amazing experience, and being a part of someone's big day. And I love the bit at the end when you look back at all the photos and you think like, that's actually really nice that I'm able to give them those memories that they're going to hopefully cherish forever. But it is a lot of pressure, and a lot of work. And I think not even just on the day, but all the kind of communications before and after, it's a lot. So I think that's why I wouldn't do it all the time, because I think that sometimes that can take the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, definitely. So you're quite diverse, and essentially it's always good to be diverse because it just means you just have more streams of like revenues to kind of like sustain yourself. So my next
Hmm.
question is, this is something you brought up, and if anyone else has any more questions, just pop them in the chat. Um, you're really interested in inclusion and diversity in the industry. Why is that?
Hmm. I think really, like, I'm a very political person. I think you'll know that. I'm a very like I'm very involved in kind of like social political issues. I want to know about them, and I believe in kind of like a just and fair society. So I want to kind of educate myself so that I can kind of contribute to that. I think growing up in South London, maybe I wasn't aware of the underrepresentation until I moved here. But like, so I studied design and going to design events, and even on my course, it's like 90% white people. Um, and that for me, I'm not kind of like used to. It's strange. And I think as well, like, I know so many creatives of color who work in the photography industry, but again, like what I was speaking about, female photographers, they're not necessarily the ones that are getting the jobs, even though they might actually be better than the people that you are seeing getting the jobs. And I think it's important to kind of all play our part in creating a more diverse and inclusive society. And I think that we kind of have a responsibility as a creative to ensure that the creative industry and the creative sectors that we're working in kind of ensure that.
So, what do you think is one of the ways we could do better, like in helping, get more diverse photographers, or just videographers into like the community? Because the first point is just even trying to encourage them that photography is a thing they can do. Because I think you, like you said,
Yeah,
probably isn't in their day-to-day businesses what they might be used to.
absolutely. Yeah, I think like recommending people for jobs and making sure that not everyone that you're recommending is, of one gender or is of one race, or however that is, that there's diversity in the people that you're recommending, diversity in the people that you're engaging with. Fuse Directory is a Manchester-based directory for creatives of colour, set up by Jahid Hussain, and it is a sick directory where you can kind of like go on and see like all these people around Manchester who are doing amazing things and maybe aren't getting the recognition that they deserve. I think encouraging platforms and panels like that is a great way to encourage diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, there are small steps that like me and you can also take as well. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but I was like on my feed as well. Like, I try and make a big effort in trying to work with all different kinds of like people
Mm-hmm.
from different walks of life, because for me in fashion, like fashion isn't just standard to one shoe fits all. Like, fashion is um like a concept of people's identity, and people's identity is different, and everyone's diverse. So when I shoot with certain people of different backgrounds, they express fashion in a different way to another person, and I think that's what encourages
Mm-hmm.
me to like want to shoot more editorial stuff because it is more based around concepts, and that's really
Yeah,
like, it for me, it just makes things just a lot more like engaging.
absolutely. Yeah, I guess, yeah, like telling stories, like you're saying, like telling people's stories is important. Um, and you definitely, when you're a creative, especially in photography, you kind of have a tool and a platform to try and help tell those stories. And I think it's important that we kind of use that in the right way.
Yeah, kind of brings me on to like a nice topic that we like heavily debated at my university, and it's all about being like, commercial and artist. Before I do jump on that, Andrew McLean, sorry guys, I'm back. Welcome back, Andy, and Rabbi, who I recently did an event with. Really cool guy, says, I agree, I was not aware of the possibility as a photographer whilst growing up in my ethnic community. Yeah, even, I think as a photographer of color, within your own community, there is such a demand for authentic shooters who understand that culture and community well. And there's so much more opportunities for people like that. Like, just talking about like Asian ethnic weddings. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just recently got a lot more into, pushing a bit more, effort into kind of chasing those jobs, because I understand the culture really well, I understand the language really well, and I just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
like you're saying, like, I can kind of pick up on people's readings, and it just makes for like a better video and better like, outcomes. So yeah, definitely like people
Mm-hmm.
of color have they should be able to have a lot more opportunities, yeah, in the industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that kind of brings me on to like the question I wanted to ask, like being a commercial and being a commercial photographer and being an artist. Where do you find yourself between the two? So like being commercial is someone who probably follows a brief, for a company,
Mm-hmm.
and being an artist is someone who probably creates their own concepts. Like, where do you eventually want to be?
Um, I think I think as a creative, like first and foremost, I'm an artist. I think that's where my passion kind of grew from. I've always been like, for as long as I can remember, like drawing and writing, and like that's why I got into graphic design, and photography just was kind of born out of that. So I think more than anything, that's where I am kind of personally. But in the same vein, like in more recent months, I found myself slipping into that role of a commercial photographer a little bit too easily, I guess, because it's easy to do when you have bills to pay, I guess. My kind of going back to when we were talking about where do you see yourself, my kind of hope is that I can not maybe minimize the amount of commercial work I do, but take on commercial work that really reflects myself as an artist.
Yeah, I think that's where I agree on as well. Like, if you put all your eggs in just being a commercial photographer, you can kind of lose your sense of integrity, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
is it just money you're chasing? And if it is, then, that's your choice. You can definitely do that. Um,
Yeah.
or if you're just trying to be like, this abstract artist, then you just come across as being too self-indulgent, and now nobody understands your work. And you get annoyed when nobody understands your work. So I think it's important to like find a balance between being a commercial artist. Like,
Absolutely.
I try and take the smaller jobs that reflect me. Yeah, they definitely pay out less, but at the end of the day, like, I'm a lot more proud of like the work and the outcome, because it's so much more authentic to what I'm trying to do, rather than working
Mm-hmm.
for people that kind of don't reflect what I'm doing. And I've definitely done a handful of those jobs, and I was just like, okay, definitely not seeing any kind of like my own artistic approach on this. So you don't get that flexibility. Do you know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
it's like you said, like, especially, in times of crisis, like, you just got to do those jobs to pay the bills. So
Mm-hmm.
photography is a luxury. Um,
Yeah.
right now, it's definitely not a necessity and an essential job. But like when it is, fully, like you're in a full-time profession, it's like one of the best jobs to ever do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely is. There's, yeah, yeah. I think you're right about the balance. You definitely need a balance. I think the majority of us didn't get into photography because we wanted to be rich. I don't think anyone really goes into the arts to want to be rich.
Yeah,
Um,
because
and I think
it's
it's
so
important to kind
difficult
of,
too as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to kind of no matter how much commercial success you get, remember why you started and why it is you want to do what you want to do.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that always brings me back to like being not just commercial, not just an artist, but wanting to be a commercial artist, which I think me and you both are. Like, you know, we're both commercial artists. We do a lot of commercial work, but we still have your own artistic flair on it. And that's what people
Mm-hmm.
invest in. You know, your clients are investing in you as an artist, so they can then
Mm-hmm.
reshape their brand image, and it kind of like, you know, you can see it in all the different works. You know,
Yeah.
um, but living in this like age of archive now, where everything that you see, you post, is going to be on the internet forever. Like I always ask myself that question: how do I want to be remembered? And I want my work to be
Yeah.
remembered as being timeless. So when people look back on my work, they'll know that it wasn't just something that was done for a campaign that's easily forgotten. You know, it's something that really
Mm.
like made a story, or like spoke volumes, or kind of influenced some kind of change or
Yeah.
social change. You know, things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a difficult thing to do as well. Like when I was speaking about how like passionate I am about politics and stuff like that, I would love to create work that kind of reflected that, but it's also a very difficult thing to do. You want to work out what you want to say, how you're going to say it, and also I think when you're trying to affect like social change, there's a lot of things that you have to kind of think about. And that's something that I would love to do with my art, but I don't feel like I'm quite there. I think I'm more likely to kind of create work that reflects like my personal ideas or my artistic self. I'm working on a project at the moment that hopefully I'll be launching soon. I really don't know with this pandemic.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. You've been teasing it quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, I started it in September, and it's a project based in South London. So obviously, because I live up here, it's been kind of hard to consistently work on it, I guess. But the first phase is kind of ready, so I'm really looking forward to like posting that, because it's kind of the first big project that I've done in a long time that reflects me and the kind of work I want to be creating.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to see that you're spending some time on doing some of your personal projects. Like, I think we as creatives have to find the balance, like you're saying. So, just before I jump onto the other questions, I've got some comments from Rachel Cotton. So, hi Sophia, it's Rachel. Nicola, you know how much I value your advice. LOL. Struggling to find stylists at the moment. What's the best tip? Makeup artists, I find so much easier to find. Good
Um,
question.
I think, yeah, I think I don't work with that many stylists personally, but I feel like I know a lot of them. Like, Instagram is like your best friend, really. Like the same way you'd find a makeup artist or a photographer, I think it's quite easy to find stylists in the same vein.
Yeah, if you're a good
Maybe,
photographer,
yeah,
you'll always tag your stylist. And
absolutely,
jumping onto where can you find stylists? Like, I absolutely love stylists. Like, I always preach about them. Like, when I get a
yeah,
chance to work with a stylist, it is the best day ever, because all my frustrations of trying to find a good outfit are gone. So shout out to Sumikanda if you're watching this. I think you might be. Like, and also Mariam, two of my favorite stylists that I've ever worked with, and these guys just have such a sharp eye for, like, you know, concepts and color, and, you know, just kind of representing ideas, because I didn't know where to begin. Like, when I look at, you know, when I go shopping, I literally just wear black. Like, this is my outfits, and, you know, like my whole wardrobe's just black. That's it. I just like wearing simple things. But I think there's more to like fashion than just, you know,
mm,
um an outfit. You got to think about the jewelry, the hairstyling, the makeup, and everything. And when you get like a whole team, like, oh my god, the image just comes out incredible.
yeah, and also like just having like extra pairs of eyes is always useful. Like I think as a photographer, sometimes you're so involved in like making sure the colors work or the composition's right or your settings are right or whatever, you might not notice those little bits that like stylists, their eye is like trained to like catch. So yeah, teamwork is definitely the way forward.
Yeah, and if you do want to find stylists, definitely Instagram's your best friend for that. And just search regional hashtags like Manchester stylists,
Hmm.
Manchester MUAs. There's lots of people out there looking to just even collaborate and just build their portfolio. I mean, that's how I came across, you know,
Yeah.
Simi. Like, we just literally found each other online, and then met at the Hatch quite a while back, and it was just like from there we just continued making projects. and it's just encouraging me to work with a lot more different
Yeah.
kinds of people, because I think you got to have that shared responsibility that you definitely always will be like a good photographer, but how much better would you be like if someone else put like some of their effort in? So yeah, definitely. So I'm gonna jump onto like another question. Um, Andrew says thoughts on specific brand. Thoughts on a specific brand and photographer we all know still organizing shoots in the current pandemic. Okay. Oh my
All
god.
right, nothing like being controversial.
All right. So, well, what's your thoughts on? Okay, so what are your thoughts on photographers shooting in the current pandemic?
I think, I think, right. I completely understand kind of why you might want to. I think for all of us at the moment, it's a very uncertain time, especially financially. It's difficult when you're used to shooting to now like be restricted, and it's difficult as well when the cash flow isn't there. So I can see the temptation, but I also think that you kind of have to be responsible. The quicker we all kind of adhere to these rules, the hopefully the less time we'll have to. And also I think in terms of like brands and stuff, I think, and photographers, I guess, like depending on your following and stuff, I think we all kind of have a responsibility to be influencing people in a positive way. And I think if you kind of set the precedent that it's okay to be out shooting and arranging these shoots and not adhering to the guidelines, then more people are kind of going to follow suit. And then, where we'll end up then.
Yeah, definitely. And I think my main response to like, the whole idea of like photographers still shooting is it's just about making smart, educated decisions, because there are people who
Yeah.
still go out for walks, and you're entitled to like exercising, you're entitled to shopping. And I've seen a lot of creatives online be creative in the time that they're allowed. Some people are doing, quick slice shoots while they're going exercising, but they're not jeopardizing
Hmm.
anyone's life. Or like some
Yeah.
people are just kind of doing shoots outside of the grocery store, but they're just following the rules.
Mm.
But I think it's when you get a big group of people, like say you've got
Mm.
5 people, and then you may not know some of them are like asymptomatic, and those people go back, and then they just kind of clusters and clusters. And I'm only saying that because I used to think, oh, just because we're young, it's not really going to affect me, why should I care? And then I lost my uncle to COVID about 2 weeks ago,
I'm
and
sorry, yeah.
his son was only 18 years old, and he didn't know he was symptomatic, and he was working down in London, traveling, doing the commutes, and he was fine. But you
Wow,
know,
yeah.
um, his dad, which is my mum's brother, just caught it, and just it was the worst situation ever. So it's more like when I think about photographers going out and shooting, it's not my concern isn't even the photographer. It's just about people's lives, and
Absolutely, yeah.
literally like it was pretty hard. Like just hearing that somebody that you'd literally known all your life has just gone in an instant, because like his son, obviously he had good intentions. He was going to work. It was like essential
Absolutely,
work.
yeah.
But obviously he just didn't even know he had it. So it's just a case of why take the risk at all. But I understand the concern about money as well. Um, but I think there are like government grants now that the government is giving. Even I've applied just in case for it, like the self-employed
Hmm.
grant for freelancers, which they'll be entitled to get up to 3 months worth of estimated salaries. Like, do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's a tough
There's
call to
loads of grants
make.
as well, like not just government ones that different like funds, different places are kind of offering. So definitely, like if you are struggling for money at this time, apply for those. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of support out there, and if you have a good family and your priority is not money, then just try and make the best of what you have. Like we're definitely rationing in my house. Like we're not spending
Mm.
unnecessarily. We're literally like just keeping back to like bare minimum basic essentials, even with food. So and because of that, it's just we're not risking anyone else's lives and danger. So yeah, it's a touchy topic, but I think
Mm.
as much as it is the photographer's decision, it's also the brand's decision as well. Like brands have
Yeah,
got to be
100%.
just the brands have got to be
They have to be responsible. Yeah.
just as much responsible. Like it's easy for us to say, oh, it's just
Hmm.
all to do with the photographer, but I can definitely see a brand turning around and saying, listen, I'm going to cut you off permanently if you don't do this shoot.
Yeah.
Your
I actually
whole
think that the brand has a bigger responsibility
yeah
because they kind of have the choice. Whereas, like, I know that as a photographer, you still have a choice as to whether or not you take the job, but it's kind of like you're faced with a difficult one. Like you say, like, do you want to lose that clientele?
yeah
But
and
whereas a brand, they could just avoid doing the shoot and just like
oh yeah, for
wait.
sure. Like it's easy for us to say this, and then like
Yeah.
I wouldn't really know what decision to make unless until I'm in that position because
Hmm.
I think I remember writing to you like how depressed I was that I had to literally turn down some of my biggest
Yeah.
jobs this year, and like they were going to be my biggest paychecks. I was getting flown out to a villa to shoot, and
Hmm.
I literally just had to turn around and say, "Listen, I've just lost somebody. I can't do it. I can't risk it."
Yeah.
But you know, the brand. I think a lot of the responsibility goes to the brand. Like they have to be responsible and not
Yeah.
pressuring the photographer because they probably have a good relationship. But like if that's like their main lifeline, and yeah, then I can definitely see why somebody would.
Yeah.
It's. I definitely think a lot of it does fall on the brand as well.
Yeah, no, I think like these are very unprecedented times. No one has ever had to kind of make these decisions before. So like I think it's easy to kind of not know what to do. I think you just have to try and stay mindful and kind of um think about like how responsible you're acting.
Yeah, and honestly, guys, if you're worried about content, we're all in the same boat. Everybody knows we're all recycling content. No one's going to call you out for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if anything, it's a good way to kind of, give yourself new creative freedom because you can go back and re-edit all those pictures. Like, I'm just having fun going back through the archives and just kind of reposting stuff that my new audience hasn't seen. Because a lot of people don't
Absolutely.
end up seeing the previous work I've done. They only end up seeing like the new amount of stuff that's on my feed. So like I posted a picture like the other day and it was from like a year ago, and people were just like, "Whoa, like where did this come from?" Like it's did it a year ago.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I've even reposted stuff that I've already posted, like not even like just from the same shoot. Like I posted like one of my favorite shots that I posted like like probably like about 2 years ago now. Like you said, like I wanted to like to introduce that because I'm so proud of that shot. Like I wanted to introduce it to my new audience. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We're all doing it.
cool. So I got some questions, and obviously, we're gonna jump onto more controversial topics. So Liam Healy asks, how do you think this will affect your work ethic once it's all over? Before we jump onto that, going back to the photographers shooting in the current scenario, he also said that it did get blown out of proportions on Twitter. I took all precautions on the shoot, but of course social media can twist things pretty easily with false tweet accusations too. Yeah, there was some, looking at the thread, there was some people saying that the guys who were in the dorms of that Twitter thread were kind of in the same shared responsibility because then why did they allow the people to come into the dorms in the first place? Um, um, Liam says, but apologies for giving off the wrong message. No, I don't think. I don't, honestly, like just kind of digesting it all. I don't think it's all on like like the photographer. I think it is just a lot of it has to do with the brands you're working with and kind of like the connections and not wanting to break them. Like I think it's a difficult decision, and honestly, like
Yeah.
I would not know what kind of decision to make in that position once I'm in there. But I think after like what happened to my uncle, like for me, I would always lean more towards like just not doing it altogether. But
Yeah.
yeah, like if you have to do it, like I don't know. What's your thoughts on it? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I feel like we've kind of like hashed it out and like spoken about it all already, kind of. But like I said, like it's really they're unprecedented times, and no one kind of knows what to do at the moment. I think everyone is going to make mistakes, and like it can be very easy to, especially when finances are involved. So I think, yeah, I think as long as everyone kind of like learns from it, it's good.
Yeah. Um So Liam also says that nobody saw me taking 2 meter distances and standing outside whilst I changed, etc. So everyone was just targeted as a whole. Yeah, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I mean, before the lockdown happened, I was looking at strategies and measures to put in place for just continuing photo shoots, and I was like writing up like a little document to kind of like give to my models, saying, "Look, listen, if we do a photo shoot, this is what you're gonna have to do." Like staying two
Hmm.
meters. So yeah, it's good that you're doing that, Liam. I think more people need to be aware of like the measures that you took, because yeah, on Twitter we're only kind of seeing only one angle of it as well, aren't we? Um, which is
Yeah,
basically
and
like,
I think those measures are something we probably should continue for a while after this pandemic as well. Just like kind of embed them into the habits of us shooting.
yeah, definitely. So I think I'm probably gonna ask I'll ask Liam this question as well. Um, Going forward, Liam, how do you think it's affected you in like your future shoots, and what do you plan to do after the whole pandemic, and like, what kind of measures do you think is the best way to kind of, for you as a photographer going forward, with your models? Like, do you have models that kind of don't follow the rules, or are they following everything you're saying seriously, and are the brands like kind of listening to you and your safety? I'll leave that one to kind of go in the comments, which we'll get back to. um God, this podcast is actually going on quite well, isn't it? So you wanted to ask me a question, Sophia, which is
Yeah.
my creative journey so far. So what would you like to know about my creative journey?
Well, I think it'd just be interesting to kind of learn how you got into it. Obviously, you were working in education for a while as well. So, kind of like, how did you kind of take the decision to leave that? Just kind of what inspires you to kind of do the work you want to do? Just generally about your like creative process and journey.
Yeah, so I mean, to put it in a nutshell, I was a college lecturer for 7 years, and it was a creative arts teacher. So I was teaching creative subjects, teaching students, telling them how to do things without having the experience of being in the industry. That's where I started to feel quite hypocritical. And I just thought, why am I teaching people what to do when I've not even got an inch of practice of being in the industry about it. So because of that, I started taking my weekends to just practice photography, because it was like an escape from the 9 to 5 work I had.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with a 10-year-old camera that was rubbish and low light. It didn't have any good features, but it could take a solid picture when the lighting conditions were good. So I started doing street photography. A lot of people don't know that a lot of my experience comes from just shooting locations and just people, just in interesting locations. And from that, I wanted to have a bit more control over it, because I kind of felt that being in street photography, I was invading people's personal spaces. And so there were some times where I just thought, am I getting too close for comfort? Like when somebody saw me taking a picture, I just didn't feel good at all. And there are way better people who do this better than me. I was just rubbish at it. So, the pro street photographers will hide themselves like snipers. They'll have insane lenses, or they'll just use these clever tricks where it's like they take a picture and they just pretend they're, taking a picture of like a window or something. It's just mad. I went on a shoot with some of my friends who are street photographers, and honestly, I'm just like, how did you get away with that? Moving into fashion, it was like taking everything I learned from street photography, which was like location, and then now I was like, okay, I've got this cool thing called fashion to work with. How can I join the two? And I was really into street fashion because I just thought this thing is so rebellious and it's so like, outrageous. Like people do all sorts of different things in street fashion, and they go to so much extreme lengths to take a good picture. I love the adrenaline of it all. So started off with like gimmicks, like using smoke flares, and then that quickly ran out, and I was like, okay, now I need to start really thinking about how to be creative. And then that's where concepts started coming up, and then that's where I started working with a lot of I'd say like creative people who have like a lot of flair and personality. And from there, I wasn't even making money at this point. I just was doing it because I was like, oh, I'm just genuinely interested in people and fashion and locations. And from that, I kind of molded my like little street style brand image, which I was like, right, if you want to do a shoot, get yourself some nice outfits. I'll do all the planning. I'll find the locations, and then we'll work together to kind of make a nice set of images that you can post and I can post. ironically enough, I ended up making a feed that was really good for brands. So every time a brand saw my profile, they were like, okay, we want what you do, but just do it for us. So weirdly enough, it just kind of, went on its own little journey. Started
Yeah.
working for a lot of startup indie brands, local brands to bigger brands. I'd say I'm quite blessed that I'm making money in a niche, because it's very difficult to make money in a niche. Because when you're in a niche yourself, like you said, you got so many forms of revenue. If I was smarter, I would be thinking about that. But now I am thinking about that. Because this pandemic reminds you that, having one lifeline isn't the best idea.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm in touch with the fashion brands. I'm speaking to them all the time and they understand it completely. All we can do right now is just postpone it. But, I could still be editing videos for people. I could still be doing, stock images. There's a lot of different ways. But yeah, I'd say my journey has mainly been because I wanted to see what was on the other side. I wanted to see if the grass was greener on the other side, and it definitely was. It definitely was.
Yeah.
So
So like, I was just gonna say, like, in general, like, in terms of like obviously you must have had like a creative bone in your body to even start teaching it. How did you kind of get into that? How did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
yeah, definitely. Before we jump onto that, we're just gonna quickly talk about Leon's responses. So, I asked him a question. I said, going forward, what do you plan to do? So, regarding bookings for the future, I have a job and shoots booked ready for when this is over. But of course, Brian and the clients will cut the budget, which will then set everyone back on finance. But I'm still working on passion projects from home. That's great to hear, man, and good to see that you're staying safe, and good to see that the brands are keeping good relationships, because I know that there are some brands who are like threatening photographers to cut all ties if they don't just don't do it. And I think ASOS was trending on Twitter. Like, did you see that ASOS were like still out, putting all their workers in such tight spaces and making them pack and sell all their merch
Right.
and doing shoots and all this crazy stuff? It was literally trending all over Twitter for like a few days, and it was just mad,
Yeah.
all the amount of pressure they were putting on creatives. Um, but yeah, I think going forward for us all, we're all gonna have to kind of deal with some sort of budget cuts. We're probably not gonna be as you know free in negotiating our own terms, our own rates. Like, we're probably just gonna have to kind of be a bit more resilient on that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's good to hear. So yeah, going back to the question that you asked me, I forgot what was it.
It was just like, in terms of like, so you did teaching first. How did you even get into that? How did you, like, what was your creative journey
Getting into
into
teaching.
doing that, I guess?
Um,
Mm.
I think getting into teaching, when I was a student in college, my teacher always said like I was a loud mouth. I'd always want to interrupt and put my hands up and just talk. So she said, you've got a knack for just talking and presenting. And I thought, that's really good. I'll go into teaching. And obviously, I was always editing, using Photoshop since I was like 13. So
Hmm.
I always wanted to create art. I was always a good drawer. I think I was like, like one of the creatives in my family. But my brother is also creative. He works in the film and TV industry as a casting director, so we both turned out to be creative. So I think it just kind of like runs in the family now. um,
Mm.
so yeah, like teaching it was just like a big joy for me, because it was like I get to do what I enjoy, but for a good wage and good holidays. And then that kind of slowly turned into feeling more like a 9 to 5, because it was just so much marking, so much feedback, so
Yeah.
much preparation, that I didn't have enough time to even socialize. Like, I couldn't watch my favorite TV shows, couldn't even hang out on the
Mm.
weekends, couldn't do nothing. It was just difficult. But the last few years, I'd say, were more difficult than the earlier years, because I think education's got a lot more. I don't know. A lot of educational institutions are trying to get more out of people for less money, so it just wasn't worth the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But that might
Like, on a
change.
similar, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
On a similar kind of vein, like, in terms of being a creative and actually, studying. Obviously, you're doing your masters. I'm doing a degree. Do you think it's kind of essential to have a degree in this day and age, like, as a creative, or not?
That's a really good question. I'm currently on my master's and I've just applied to defer because my teacher gave the option. She said you can either continue, but all your classes are going to be online, but you're not going to have the
Yeah.
benefits of a studio, resources, all these kind of different things. I've learned quite a lot on my master's, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not in
Mm-hmm.
any rush to complete it because I don't think you need the degree. You're doing graphic design as a degree, but you're doing photography
Yeah. Yeah.
as a profession, which I just was baffled by. I was like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? But obviously you've got transferable skills there, so yeah, there's always room for like doing a master's, doing a degree. If you're not confident in picking up a camera, then the degree will show you how to do it. If you're not confident in people skills, the degree will show you how to work in a team. If you're not confident in selling yourself, then the degree will show you how to have good presentation skills. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
university is really important because it helps you to kind of like teach people how to read, write, think, articulate for themselves. And as a photographer, like, you gotta sell yourself. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta have those skills where you can tell people that, listen, I'm worth this, and this is why, I should be worth your time. And that level of confidence, like, you might find at university, you know what I mean, whether it's technical or whether it's personal, right? But do you need it? Not really, because I've never had one client ever say to me, have you got a degree in
Yeah.
photography? Like,
Yeah.
officially, you don't need it. I think the whole system of being a creative is changing. The landscape is changing. I think education is under a lot of pressure right now because teenagers are going uh, more independent and finding new ways to make money, whether it's online or whether it's through their own businesses. Like, there's lots of different ways right now, but there is still benefits of doing it. Like, if like in a recession, education is great because it can still get you a lot of finance, and support. Um, if you're someone who gets too lazy, education kind of keep you on track. Yeah. What do you think?
Um, yeah, no, I definitely don't think you need a degree to be a creative, especially a photographer. Like I said, I've never studied photography. And the reason, like I studied graphic design, was because when I started my degree, I didn't want to be a photographer. It was just like my kind of hobby. Um, but yeah, I think for me, like the thing that I've taken from my degree more than anything is kind of these soft skills, like you say, like presentation skills, or just like the life skills, like meeting people from different walks of life, learning to be a little bit more independent. Those kind of skills, I think,
Yeah.
are actually a lot more valuable than the actual content that
Yeah,
I've
and I
been
forgot to
taught.
mention one more important one: networking. I think with
Mm.
university will give you such a big boost if you're somebody who's struggling with networking. Because at my university, anyway, it's literally in the middle of the creative scene. There are so many creatives at my university. It's right next to like all the big creative, events and places. So it's like a shortcut into like finding the right people very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, for networking, it can be really good as well. I'd say it all just depends on what your priorities are, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely,
And
definitely.
if you're not in a rush to get there, then yeah, like it doesn't hurt to have the degree because
Yeah, that's the way I think of it. It's kind of like, for me, I think it's kind of like a safety net as well. I always thought, like, if this photography thing doesn't kind of work out, at least I've kind of got a degree, so I could kind of either go further with education, or I could kind of like look at different places to kind of go into.
yeah, definitely, it's always good to have that that safety net. And it's one of the reasons why I also went to education. Now that you asked me, is because you know even in a recession, you'll always need teachers. Even in some of the worst case
Hmm.
scenarios, they are always going to be considered as essential workers. So there are still people still working in school right now. So yeah, definitely, like it can help. Honestly, it can help, and especially if you're not looking to go freelance, because that's what we're talking about, freelance. For an agency and a firm, yeah, they definitely do look at your degree.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, for sure. Um, Maybe now is the time to grow your YouTube channel. Love the podcast format. Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. I was just saying that before. We've got so much time on our hands. Now's a great time to find new, interesting ways to kind of like keep yourself creative. Because I just felt like I was just losing the plot, not being able to go out and take pictures, but I can still talk to people. I can still talk about what we've done. I can still connect. it's a better time to do podcasting than it was like 10 years ago. Awesome. If you guys have any other last remaining questions for Sophia or me, just get them in now, because we're pretty much covered all the topics that we wanted to. If you do want to check out Sophia's work, definitely check out her Instagram. It's on the screen there, and her website, which I'm just going to quickly go back to, which photographers, especially starting out now, I think Sophia's website is just insane. Like, in terms of how you've laid it out, it's so easy to use, and like, I need to revamp my website because I've not touched it in ages. So I definitely am considering going to Format. Like, Format looks really good. I'm kind of using Wix right now, and it's just not the best.
Yeah.
It's really
Format
glitchy.
also do like a lot of support stuff. So when I was talking about funds that you can apply for, you don't actually have to be a member of Format to apply for this fund, but Format currently have a fund for photographers. I think they're like £500 grants or something like that, which you can apply for.
That is so cool.
And they also, they just do loads of stuff. So like, they do a lot of articles, they do a lot of tips, they will feature their members often. So it's a good kind of like community to kind of get involved in.
Yeah, definitely. So if you guys are looking into trying to sustain yourself right now, or even looking to kind of take this time and just work on yourself and like kind of do everything that you didn't have time for, then definitely maybe working on your websites, or just kind of like everything else that's not, wasn't on the checklist. That's what I'm kind of doing right now, just taking the time to just reshape your brand image. Any last questions, Sophia?
I don't think I've got any. I think we've been speaking for a while, actually. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, I know, it's mad. There's a lot of topics in there. I just want to say thank you to all the people who tuned in, all the amazing questions. Definitely, I'll be doing a lot more of the live podcast series. We've got lots of ideas of like people to be on the show, lots of guests, and it's a great just chance to connect. So if you have any more questions, you can always just post them in the comments even after the podcast is finished. I'll put timestamps, and I'll try and get the best highlights of the podcast and dump them onto like the stories as well, so for people who've missed out. So thanks so much for joining in, and yeah, we'll catch you guys on the next one, and follow Sophia on all the socials, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah, thank you to everyone who sent them in, and thank you for having me as well.
Anytime, man. Bye.